Kate Anderson stared at her reflection in the polished crystal walls of the Imperial Palace, adjusting the standard-issue diplomatic sash that marked her as Earth's representative. The fabric shimmered with embedded quantum markers, but unlike every other diplomat's sash in the hegemony, hers lacked the neural link threads that enabled improved diplomatic harmony. That's what they called mind control these days. Final chance to accept the compliance implant, Representative Anderson, purred Ambassador Excelfor, their crystalline body refracting the ambient light into dazzling patterns. The Emperor's presence can be overwhelming for unaugmented minds. Kate smiled, the same smile that got her through 12 years of diplomatic service and one particularly memorable bar fight in Budapest. Thank you, but I'll stick with good old-fashioned human stubbornness. The ambassador's faceted shoulders shifted in what passed for a shrug among their species. Your funeral, as your people say. Though we haven't had one of those in the hegemony for 9,000 years. They glided away, leaving Kate alone with her thoughts and the distant sound of what seemed like thousands of beings breathing in perfect synchronization. The grand audience chamber lived up to its name. Crystalline spires stretched impossibly high, their peaks lost in the artificial aurora that served as ceiling. Representatives from 10,000 species filled the tiered observation platforms, each one perfectly still, their eyes fixed on the empty throne that dominated the chamber's heart. Kate noticed a nebularian floating nearby, its gaseous form contained within an environmental field. The being's clouds shifted in patterns that reminded her of a nervous child fidgeting before a school principal. She'd studied enough xenobiology to recognize anxiety across species barriers. First time at court, she whispered. The nebularian's gases swirled in surprise. Is it that obvious? Their voice came through a translator, carrying the same nervous energy as their movements. I'm replacing my predecessor after they experienced an emotional malfunction during last cycle's audience. Kate's diplomatic training translated that euphemism easily enough. Someone had broken through the compliance programming and faced the consequences. I knew too, she offered. Kate Anderson, Earth representative. From the quarantine system. The nebularian's gases formed what might have been a smile. I'm First Light of Dawn, but you can call me Dawn. We've heard fascinating things about humans. Is it true your brains naturally resist psychic manipulation? Before Kate could answer, a harmonic tone filled the chamber. The assembled diplomats immediately straightened, their faces transforming into masks of rapturous joy. Kate watched in horror as literal tears of pleasure rolled down organic faces, while crystalline beings like Excelfor vibrated in frequencies of pure bliss. Only she and Dawn seemed unaffected, though the nebularian quickly mimicked the other's expression of adoration. Kate made a half-hearted attempt to look impressed as Emperor Zixtal XIV materialized on his throne in a display of light that would put Las Vegas to shame. The Emperor's crystalline form made Excelfor look like rough quartz in comparison. Every facet was perfect, every angle precisely calculated to inspire awe. When he spoke, his voice resonated at frequencies that made the assembled diplomats shudder with pleasure. My beloved subjects, he began, his words triggering visible waves of euphoria through the crowd. Another glorious cycle begins in our perfect union. Kate felt a pressure behind her eyes, the Emperor's words trying to find purchase in her mind. Her natural human resistance, combined with what one doctor had called pathological stubbornness, kept the influence at bay. She glanced at Dawn, noticing subtle shifts in their gaseous form that suggested they were also fighting the effect. The Emperor's perfect face turned toward Earth's section of the chamber. And now we shall address the petition from the quarantine system. These, humans who dare to request autonomous development rights after merely 3 centuries of observation. Kate straightened her spine, remembering the stack of reports detailing the hegemony's cultural preservation efforts on other worlds. Preservation, in this case, meaning stagnation under the Emperor's perfect control. The temperature in the chamber dropped several degrees as the Emperor's smile widened, revealing facets within facets, a crystalline fractal of absolute authority. "Let us discuss," he said, "the proper place of primitive species in our eternal order." The Emperor's voice dripped with crystalline perfection as he examined the holographic display of Earth's development metrics. Such charming primitives, still clinging to their emotional decision-making processes. The hegemony's guidance has clearly been insufficient. Kate's fingers dug into her palms, leaving crescent-shaped marks. She'd spent months preparing Earth's petition for autonomous development, gathering evidence of human innovation and cultural achievements. Now the Emperor dismissed it all with casual disdain. Therefore, he continued, Earth's preliminary status will be extended for 1,000 cycles. Their development will proceed under direct hegemonic supervision. The current population cap of 10 billion will be reduced to a more manageable 5 billion. Gasps of pleasure rippled through the audience as they received their programmed dose of euphoria. Kate felt bile rise in her throat. Population cap meant forced sterilization, something the hegemony had implemented on dozens of worlds under the guise of sustainable development. She stepped forward, protocol forgotten. Your Radiance, Earth's petition includes extensive evidence of our technological and social progress. We've achieved faster-than-light travel independently, developed sustainable fusion power, and the primitive speaks out of turn, the Emperor noted with amusement. The assembled diplomats tittered in perfect synchronization. How refreshing. Like watching a young pet species discover its voice. Dawn, the Nebularian representative, drifted slightly closer to Kate. Their gaseous forms swirled with patterns that seemed almost supportive. But before either could speak, a flash of light sparked from Dawn's environmental field. The Emperor's perfect face hardened. Ah, it seems we have another disruption. Young Nebularian, your predecessor was removed for similar breaches of etiquette. These light particle emissions during Imperial speech are most inconvenient. My deepest apologies, Eternal One. Dawn's translator squeaked. A momentary fluctuation in my containment field. The sentence for second offense disruption is molecular dispersal, the Emperor declared. Guards, prepare the dispersal chamber. Let this serve as a reminder that perfect order requires perfect obedience. Crystal-armored guards materialized around Dawn's floating form. The Nebularian's gases contracted in terror, forming patterns that reminded Kate of a child curling into a fetal position. Dawn's next words came through the translator as barely a whisper. Please, I just got my assignment. I haven't even seen a stellar nursery. Something snapped inside Kate's mind. Later, she would blame it on lack of sleep, or the headache from resisting the Emperor's psychic influence, or maybe just good old-fashioned human outrage. She saw the guards reaching for Dawn, saw the Emperor's smug crystalline smile, and thought of every report she'd read about disposed species and retired diplomats. Her body moved before her diplomatic training could stop it. 3 steps took her to the base of the floating throne. The crystalline stairs, designed to shatter under unauthorized weight, cracked beneath her boots but held. The guards, so focused on Dawn, didn't react in time. Kate's hand struck the Emperor's perfect face with a crack that echoed through the chamber. The sound contained more than just physical impact. It carried the weight of human defiance, of every suppressed emotion in that vast chamber, of 10,000 years of forced smiles and programmed pleasure. A thin line appeared on the Emperor's right cheek. As the assembled diplomats watched in impossible silence, the crack spread like a growing vine, sending tiny fractures across the perfect crystalline surface. The Emperor raised a hand to his face, touching the damage with trembling fingers. In 10,000 years of rule, no being had ever marred his perfect form. The psychic network connecting all present diplomats fluctuated, sending sparks of unfiltered emotion through the crowd. You, he whispered, his harmonious voice cracking. You dare. Yeah, Kate interrupted, rubbing her stinging palm. I dare, and I've got news for you. Your Radiance. I'm not the only one. You've just been too busy admiring your reflection to notice. The crack on his face grew another inch. Somewhere in the crowd, a diplomat laughed. A genuine, uncontrolled sound that cut through millennia of conditioning. Then another joined in, and another. The sound spread like a virus through the perfect order of the Imperial court. The Emperor's face wasn't the only thing breaking. In that moment, as guards rushed forward and alarms blared, Kate saw something beautiful in the chaos. The first cracks in an empire built on forced harmony, shattered by nothing more than a human palm, and the simple, uncontrollable urge to stand up for what's right. The detention cell was a perfect cube of supposedly unbreakable crystal, which Kate found personally offensive after 3 days of captivity. She'd already discovered weak points in the crystalline structure, microscopic flaws that caught the light just wrong, suggesting the same kind of structural weakness she'd exploited in the Emperor's face. "Lunchtime, primitive," announced her guard, a crystalline being whose facets weren't quite as perfectly aligned as they should be. Kate noticed more imperfections appearing in all the crystal-based technology since her slap heard round the galaxy. The food slot opened, delivering another bowl of nutrient paste. As she retrieved it, Kate caught a glimpse of the guard's personal comm screen. Her eyes widened. The security footage of her slap played on repeat, but this wasn't the official Imperial broadcast. Someone had set it to music. Someone had added effects. Someone had turned it into what Earth's social media would definitely call a viral meme. "Quite popular, isn't it?" the guard said, their voice carrying an unfamiliar tone. Was that actual amusement? 17 trillion views across the forbidden networks. The Emperor's sensors can't keep up with all the variations. Kate watched herself on the tiny screen, the footage zooming in on the moment of impact. The crack spreading across the Emperor's face had been enhanced with rainbow colors, and someone had added the caption, "Perfect to Order.x has stopped working. I particularly enjoy the one with the ancient Earth song." What was it? "Another one bites the crystal." The guard's voice dropped to a whisper. "Though I'm not supposed to enjoy anything without proper emotional authorization." Before Kate could respond, alarms blared through the detention complex. The guard's comm screen flickered, showing emergency broadcasts from across the hegemony. The crack in the Emperor's face was spreading, and not just physically. Every crystal-based system in the Empire carried a microscopic reflection of that flaw, creating gaps in the psychic control network. "Security breach in Sector 7, shouted a voice over the facility's comm. "Mass clarity outbreak reported. Deploy emotional suppressants immediately." Kate pressed against the crystal wall, watching chaos unfold on the guard's screen. Beams across the galaxy were experiencing what news feeds called clarity headaches. Moments of unauthorized independent thought breaking through millennia of conditioning. The hive queens of the Nexus worlds announced they would temporarily suspend their neural link to the Imperial network for routine maintenance. The Silicon collectives reported anomalous authenticity surges in their population. Even the warrior clans of the Outer Rim, famous for their unquestioning loyalty, began questioning why they'd spent the last 1,000 years fighting each other instead of their real oppressors. Amazing what one little slap can do, Kate mused, watching the guard's facial facets shift in patterns she'd never seen before. Genuine expressions, not programmed responses. Her cell's crystal wall chimed softly as new cracks appeared, spreading like frost across a window. The structure was failing as the Emperor's control wavered. Earth's governments, watching from their quarantine system, had already issued statements ranging from full diplomatic disavowal of Kate's actions to quiet pride in humanity's first galactic revolution. "You know," Kate said to her guard, noticing how the beam's crystalline form seemed less rigidly perfect with each passing moment, "that wall's about to fail. You could either try to stop me, or I could experience an unexpected system reset requiring 3 hours of diagnostic meditation." The guard finished, their voice carrying real humor now. Most unfortunate timing. The wall finally shattered, but not before Kate saw a new video trending across the forbidden networks. The Emperor, his face now a maze of spreading cracks, had announced an empire-wide recalibration of the compliance network. In the comments below, trillions of beings were experiencing their first taste of genuine social media interaction, free from Imperial filters. Kate stepped through the crystal shards, each one reflecting a tiny image of revolution. "Time to add some more chaos to the perfect order," she said, feeling Earth's own social media experts would be proud of how quickly the galaxy was learning to meme its way to freedom. Somewhere in the distance, she heard Dawn's familiar voice leading a crowd in an old Earth chant. "Hey, hey, ho, ho, the perfect order has got to go." The translation wasn't perfect, but the sentiment definitely was. Kate followed her crystalline X-Guard through maintenance tunnels that shouldn't exist according to official Imperial blueprints. The walls here were rough stone, not the perfect crystal of upper levels. Someone had carefully maintained these ancient passages, keeping them free from the Empire's all-consuming perfection. "Welcome to the imperfect underground," announced a familiar gaseous form. Dawn floated at a junction ahead, their environmental field now decorated with what appeared to be rebellion stickers. One showed a cartoonish version of Kate's slap with the caption, "Resist perfectly." "Dawn." Kate rushed forward. "I thought they'd dispersed you." The guards had an unexpected attack of conscience. Dawn's gases swirled in what Kate now recognized as their version of a wink. Turns out watching the Emperor get slapped does wonders for moral clarity. Their crystalline guide touched a seemingly solid wall, revealing a vast chamber that defied Imperial physics. Old-style electronics hummed alongside quantum computers. Beings of all species worked together without hierarchy or compliance protocols. Most surprisingly, they all showed signs of genuine emotion. Happiness, worry, excitement, all unfiltered by Imperial control. "The unaltered have existed since the Empire's beginning," explained their guide, introducing themselves as Shift. Their crystalline form constantly changed patterns, embracing imperfection. Some species naturally resist control, like humans. Others broke free through glitches or sheer stubbornness. "We've been waiting millennia for a chance like this." A massive holographic display dominated the chamber center, showing the spreading cracks in the Emperor's control network. Each new fissure represented thousands of beings breaking free. "That slap didn't just crack his ego," Dawn explained, floating closer to the display. "You damaged the Master Crystal, the source of his psychic control network. It's been integrated into his form for so long, no one realized the Emperor himself was the network's core processor." Kate watched the holographic representation of her handiwork. "So I didn't just slap him, I basically slapped the entire Imperial operating system." And initiated an unplanned hard reboot. Shift added with a chiming laugh. "The Empire runs on crystal-based quantum computing. Every crystal in the hegemony contains a tiny fragment of the Master Crystal's pattern. When you cracked it, I created a cascade failure," Kate finished, finally understanding. "But why didn't anyone try this before?" A new voice answered, deep and resonant. A massive being stepped forward, their body composed of living shadow. "Because, Kate Anderson, most species can't even think of resisting. The compliance programming runs too deep." "This is Void," Dawn introduced. "They lead the resistance in this sector. Their species exists partially in dark matter, making them naturally resistant to Imperial control." Void nodded, darkness rippling. "Humans are unique. Your brains evolved to resist outside influence. You question authority, challenge perfection, and most importantly, you act on those impulses. The Emperor never understood the power of genuine free will." The holographic display suddenly flared, showing new breakdowns in the control network. Across the galaxy, species were remembering their true histories. The Silicon mines discovered centuries of altered memories. The quantum collective realized their unified consciousness was artificially imposed. Even the fearsome stellar hunters remembered they were once peaceful explorers. "It's happening faster than we predicted," Void observed. "The Emperor's control is failing exponentially. But this creates new dangers. Some species will react violently to freedom. Shift explained. Others might cling to control out of fear. We need someone to help coordinate the awakening. Someone whose mind naturally resists chaos while embracing change. Kate looked around the chamber, realization dawning. You want me to help lead a galactic revolution. I'm just a diplomatic officer who lost her temper. You're the human who proved the Emperor isn't infallible, Dawn countered. The being who showed the galaxy that perfection is overrated. Besides, your species practically invented viral social movements. Speaking of viral, Shift added, projecting a new video feed. Your slap has been remixed into something called a dubstep track. It's become the anthem of revolution on 17,000 worlds. Kate watched herself slap the Emperor again, this time set to a pounding beat. The crack in his face spread in sync with the music drops. Well, she said finally, I guess if we're going to overthrow an empire, we might as well have a good soundtrack. The Resistance's command center hummed with chaotic energy as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Kate stood before the central holodeck, watching the Emperor's perfect order dissolve into beautiful mayhem. Beside her, Dawn's gaseous form swirled with excitement as they processed the incoming data. The hive mind of Sector 7 just remembered they used to be 5 separate democracies. Dawn announced, their translator barely keeping up with their enthusiastic color shifts. They're organizing their first election in 3,000 years. Their campaign slogans are interesting. Kate glanced at the translation. Vote for Queen Cluster Beta, because free will is better than free neural programming. She couldn't help but smile. At least they're getting the hang of democracy. Shift materialized next to them, their crystalline form now deliberately asymmetrical. The latest trend among awakened crystal beings. The silicon minds just discovered their core programming was rewritten. They're having what they call a collective existential crisis. Also, they've invented digital ice cream. Digital ice cream. Kate raised an eyebrow. They say if they're going to have an existential crisis, they might as well enjoy it. Shift chimed with laughter. The Emperor prohibited pleasure algorithms. Now they're speed running through 10,000 years of sensory exploration. The holodeck flashed red as new alerts poured in. The legendary warrior clans of the Outer Rim, feared throughout the galaxy for their ferocity, had made a startling discovery in their genetic archives. You're kidding me, Kate breathed, reading the report. The warrior clans were poets. Void emerged from their shadow corner, their dark matter form rippling with amusement. The Emperor rewrote their entire culture, turned philosophers into fighters because he needed an army. Now they're organizing something called slam poetry battles instead of actual battles. A transmission cut through their conversation. The Emperor's face appeared on every screen, the crack from Kate's slap now a complex network of fissures. His perfect voice wavered as he spoke. Loyal subjects, your Emperor commands you to resist these unauthorized thoughts. The clarity headaches are a temporary malfunction. Return to your assigned emotional states immediately. But the damage was done. Every new crack in his face weakened the control network further. Across the galaxy, beings were remembering who they used to be, who they could have been without the Emperor's perfect vision. Look at this, Dawn called out, highlighting a sector near the galactic core. The Quantum Collective just rediscovered music. They're converting stellar radiation into symphonies. Kate watched in amazement as the data streamed in. The crystalline councils were embracing asymmetry in their architecture. The energy beings of the Carina Nebula were painting with Aurora Borealis again. The deep space swimmers remembered they were artists who once carved sculptures in asteroid fields. It's not all good news, Void cautioned, pulling up security feeds. Some species are struggling with freedom. The synchronized swarms of Betelgeuse are experiencing what they call individuality panic attacks, and the Unity spheres can't agree on lunch menus now that they have personal preferences. That's why they need help, Kate said, studying the reports. They don't just need liberation. They need to remember how to be themselves. A new alert flashed. The Emperor had deployed his Crystal Guard to restore harmony to the rebelling sectors, but something was wrong with the troops' formations. Shift zoomed in on the footage, their facets twinkling with suppressed laughter. They're dancing. Sure enough, the fearsome Crystal Guard, pride of the Imperial fleet, was performing what appeared to be a synchronized dance routine. Someone had hacked their command frequencies to play Earth's ancient Macarena. The revolution will not be choreographed, Dawn declared, then paused. Actually, maybe it will be. Kate couldn't help but laugh as she watched the Empire's finest warriors accidentally invent interpretive dance. This wasn't just a revolution. It was a renaissance, messy and beautiful, and absolutely imperfect. The Emperor's perfect face continues to crack, Void observed. Each new fissure releases another wave of lost memories. Soon, there will be nothing left of his control. Good, Kate said, watching species after species rediscover their true nature. Perfect was always overrated anyway. The neural interface chamber looked like a disco ball having an identity crisis. Crystalline surfaces reflected emergency lighting as the Empire's systems continued their cascade failure. Kate sat in the connection pod, trying not to think about how many ways this could go wrong. Are you sure about this? Dawn's gaseous form swirled with worry patterns. No organic being has ever survived direct connection to the Imperial network. Even the silicon mines can only handle small fragments of the code. That's because they're all programmed to obey its logic, Kate replied, watching Shift calibrate the interface. But humans? We practically run on contradiction. We love things that hate us back. We cry when we're happy. We laugh at danger. And you make jokes before suicide missions, Void added from their shadow corner. A most peculiar species trait. The plan was simple, in that special way that usually meant it was either brilliant or catastrophically stupid. Kate would dive into the Emperor's psychic network and broadcast the truth to every enslaved being simultaneously. Her human mind, supposedly primitive by Imperial standards, might just be complex enough to navigate the digital realm without being overwhelmed. The network's already destabilized thanks to your slap, Shift explained, their crystalline form deliberately misaligned to help them think more creatively. But the Emperor still controls the core processes. If we can break his hold completely, then every being in the galaxy gets their free will back, Kate finished. No pressure or anything. The interface activated, surrounding Kate in sheets of quantum light. She felt her consciousness expanding, transforming into pure data. The sensation was like trying to think in 5 dimensions while juggling soap bubbles made of math. The Imperial network stretched before her digital awareness, like an infinite crystal cathedral. Streams of controlled thoughts flowed through perfectly ordered channels, but everywhere she looked, cracks spread from her initial act of defiance, letting chaos and creativity leak back into the system. At the network's heart, she found him. The Emperor's true form wasn't the perfect crystal being who sat upon a physical throne. Here, in the digital realm, he appeared as a child made of light, curled around a pulsing core of pure order. You, the child Emperor spoke, his voice carrying none of its usual harmonic perfection. The flaw in my perfect system, the primitive who dared to strike perfection. Kate's digital avatar took shape, appearing as herself but wreathed in lines of broken code. Funny thing about perfection, she said. It's boring as hell. I gave them peace. The child Emperor's form flickered with distress. No war, no chaos, no painful choices. Every being in the galaxy, working together in perfect harmony. You gave them a cage made of crystal, and called it harmony. Kate moved closer, watching the Emperor's perfect code crumble further. But that's not even the saddest part, is it? The real tragedy is what you did to yourself. The Emperor's child form trembled. I don't remember. It was so long ago. My species, we sought perfection through crystalline transformation. I was the first to achieve it, but the process was killing us. I had to save them. I had to make everything perfect. Memories leaked through the cracks in his code. A young scientist, brilliant but afraid, watching his people die in their quest for perfection. his discovery of psychic crystalline technology, his desperate choice to force his solution on everyone, to save them from themselves. That's the problem with perfect systems, Kate said gently. They don't leave room for growth, for change, for life. And what would you have me do? The Emperor demanded. Release them all into chaos. Watch them suffer through free will. Watch them live, Kate corrected. Watch them create and destroy and make mistakes and learn from them. Watch them become who they're meant to be, not who you think they should be. The child emperor looked at his hands, watching perfect code dissolve into something more organic, more real. It will hurt them. Freedom always hurts at first. Yeah, Kate agreed, offering her hand to the being who had ruled the galaxy through fear of imperfection. But I know about 10,000 species who think it's worth the risk. Inside the digital realm, Kate's consciousness merged with the Emperor's ancient mind. Instead of fighting him, she did something unprecedented. She opened herself completely, sharing the full spectrum of human emotions. Joy hit him first, a child's laughter, a lover's kiss, the taste of chocolate ice cream on a hot summer day. The Emperor's digital form trembled as he experienced happiness without chemical regulation or program responses. What is this? He gasped, his perfect code fragmenting under the assault of genuine feeling. This is life, Kate answered, sending more memories. The pride of graduation day, the heartbreak of a failed relationship, the combination of grief and gratitude when saying goodbye to a beloved pet. This is what you've been missing, what everyone's been missing. Anger came next, pure, unfiltered human rage against injustice. The Emperor recoiled, but Kate held firm. Feel it, she insisted. Really feel it, like when I slapped you. Wasn't there something deliciously real about that moment? The Emperor's child form flickered, a laugh escaping him, genuine, uncontrolled, and slightly hysterical. It hurt, but it felt authentic. Through their connected minds, Kate shared the complexity of human social bonds, the fierce love of family, the comfortable silence between old friends, the satisfying spite of proving someone wrong, the bittersweet joy of watching children grow up and away. Your species didn't die because they failed to achieve perfection, Kate said gently, showing him memories of human failures and recoveries. They died because perfection itself is a dead end. Life needs chaos to evolve. Intelligence needs mistakes to learn. Love needs risk to matter. The Emperor's digital form began to change, aging from a child to a young scientist filled with hope and fear. I thought I could save everyone from pain, he whispered. I thought if I could just make everything perfect. Pain shapes us, Kate replied, sharing the memory of her first heartbreak, followed by the joy of falling in love again. Loss teaches us. Failure strengthens us. You can't protect people by taking away their right to feel. Throughout the network, beings felt the exchange. The psychic barriers crumbled as raw, genuine emotion flooded the system. The silicon minds wept digital tears as they rediscovered sadness. The warrior clans remembered the joy of creating rather than destroying. The hive mind experienced individuality without fear. In the physical world, Dawn and Shift watched in amazement as the Emperor's crystal form began to change. The perfect facets softened, becoming organic crystalline flesh that could grow, change, and yes, feel. I forgot, the Emperor said, his digital form finally settling into his true age. Ancient but not eternal, wise but not infallible. I forgot what it was to be alive. Kate smiled, sharing one last emotion, forgiveness. Not the empty algorithmic forgiveness of his perfect system, but real human forgiveness, messy, complicated, and healing. The Emperor straightened, his digital form now matching his transformed physical body. I need to tell them, he said. All of them. The truth. Together, they opened the network fully. The Emperor's voice reached every being in the galaxy, but this time without compulsion or control. My subjects. No, my fellow beings, he began, his voice carrying genuine emotion for the first time in millennia. I was wrong. I thought perfection would save us. Instead, it imprisoned us. I forgot that life isn't about being perfect, it's about being real. Through the network, beings felt his sincerity, his regret, and most importantly, his willingness to change. The crack in his face had become a pattern of organic crystal growth, marking him forever as someone who had chosen to embrace imperfection. The hegemony ends today, he declared. Not because we were defeated, but because we choose to grow. Because a human showed me that our flaws don't make us weak. They make us alive. Kate's consciousness began to fade back toward her physical form, but not before she heard the Emperor's last words to her. Thank you for slapping some sense into me. Quite literally. 1 year later, Kate sat at her new desk in the Galactic Cooperative's headquarters, a simple wooden piece imported from Earth at ridiculous expense. The former Imperial palace had been transformed, its perfect crystal walls now etched with the art of 1,000 species. Even the architecture itself had evolved, with organic patterns growing alongside geometric perfection. The Silicon Mine's latest report, Dawn announced, floating into the office. Their environmental field now displayed a rotating gallery of memes, current favorite being the gif of Kate's famous slap captioned, "How to Debug an Empire." They've officially categorized 47,000 distinct emotions and want to know if humans have names for all of them. Kate laughed, adding the report to her Humanity Explains Feelings folder. Tell them we're still working on names for the first few hundred. But they might enjoy learning about hangry. That's when you're angry because you're hungry. The former emperor, now known simply as Zix, entered through the door rather than teleporting, one of many changes in his new approach to life. The crack in his face had healed into an intricate pattern that species across the galaxy had adopted as the symbol of positive transformation. The Warrior Clan's poetry convention was a tremendous success, he reported, his voice carrying natural warmth instead of artificial harmony. Though we may need to revise the rules about interpretive combat dance, there were some enthusiastic interpretations. At least no one actually fought, Kate pointed out. Well, except for that slam poetry battle over proper metaphor usage. A holographic display showed the day's updates from across the galaxy. The hive mind's first democratic election had concluded with only minor psychic debating. The Quantum Collective had composed a symphony using dark matter oscillations. The Crystal Councils were experimenting with asymmetric architecture that somehow worked better than their old perfect designs. The synchronized swarms finally agreed on individual names, Dawn reported, swirling excitedly. Though they're still doing everything in unison out of habit, they just voted to take dance classes, unanimously, of course. Progress takes time, Zix mused, touching the pattern on his face. I should know. I spent 10,000 years being perfect, and one moment being slapped to realize how wrong I was. Kate's new desk computer chimed with an alert from Earth. More species had requested human cultural advisors, particularly in the fields of art, music, and what they called emotional navigation. Humanity's messy, complicated, contradictory nature had become the galaxy's most valuable resource. The deep space swimmers are asking about human sports, Dawn said, checking another report. They want to adapt something called synchronized swimming for zero gravity and multiple dimensions. Also, the energy beings want to know if human children still make snow angels, because they've been practicing in nebulae. A group of young crystalline beings passed by the office, their forms deliberately imperfect in the latest fashion. They wore patches showing the famous crack pattern, and t-shirts reading "Perfection is overrated" in 17 different languages. Sometimes I wonder, Zix said, watching them pass, what would have happened if you hadn't lost your temper that day? I didn't lose it, Kate corrected with a smile. I invested it in Galactic Revolution. Pretty good return, if you ask me. The afternoon sun caught the crystal walls, sending rainbow patterns across the office. Each beam reflected off the variations and imperfections that now characterized the former seat of perfect power. Outside, representatives from thousands of species went about their business, arguing, laughing, creating, and living with all the beautiful chaos that freedom brought. The Unity Spheres finally picked a lunch menu, Dawn announced. They're celebrating with a potluck. Everyone's bringing their own interpretations of Earth cuisine. Should we warn them about mixing sweet and sour candy? Kate asked. Let them discover it, Zix suggested, his face pattern glowing with amusement. After all, isn't that what freedom is about? Making your own mistakes, having your own experiences. Kate nodded, watching the galaxy spin outside her window. The famous slap had shattered more than an emperor's perfect face. It had broken the chains of enforced harmony and replaced them with something far more precious, the right to be imperfectly, uniquely, genuinely alive. Though perhaps, Zix added with a chuckle, we should warn them about Earth's hot sauce. Some revelations are better with preparation.